it's February 2025. It's a very cold and frosty February morning here in England today. So the book that I am reviewing today is this one. It is Written in the Stars by Debbie Frank. And this book is all about astrology. I haven't done any book reviews for astrology books before, even though I'm really interested in astrology, and it's been kind of an ongoing interest all my life really, but particularly in the last few years I've kind of got over the shame factor of the fact that I'm actually interested in astrology and just got really much deeper into it, learning much more about charts and things. So the reason I decided to review this book was because I actually read the whole book. So usually, I'm always on the lookout for a book about astrology, and this is from the library. Just happened to see it there, so picked it up. And usually I look up, my signs, some of my main planet signs and people that I know. And then, I sort of have a little skim read over them, and then, it's sort of, I lose interest and it goes back to the library or wherever it came from. But this one, it was just so engaging and easy to read that I thought, do you know what? I'm going to read this whole book. Even the signs I have no interest in. I have no planets in those signs, and neither do the people I care about. And I'm just going to read this whole book. And I'm so glad that I did, because it's really broadened my interest even further. So there's certain signs that I just don't feel a connection with, which makes sense because they're not where I'm strongest. And actually it was really interesting to read more about them, and then to think, actually that person does have that I know, and it helps you understand people a bit more. I know that astrology is one of those things that people are very much like, oh, a load of old rubbish. I don't want to focus on people who are clearly not interested. But astrology, it's proper old. It's really old. Really ancient civilizations used astrology. They've found signs of it, in pyramids and shit like that. So it's really old. And if you think about it on a sort of vibrational, sorry, my cat's picking at the door to try and get in, but she's just going to run around if she's in here and then want to go back out. But if you think about it, if we're all sort of vibration and everything. Yeah, anyway, if you think about it, if we're all vibration, that actually where the planets are is going to create some kind of, resonance between them when a spirit comes in, or however you believe that we get here. Just this purely mechanistic, physical act of appearing in the world would still be affected by the resonance of those different planets and things in different places at that time. So you've got the personal astrology of people. So you're not just your sun sign. This book is literally all about sun signs. But I think whenever you're reading a book like this, you need to keep in mind particularly what your moon sign is and what your ascendant is. And also for anybody else who you are interested in looking up. I'm going to just let the cat out. So, and one of the things that was actually really interesting about reading this book, running through every single star sign, is that you can really see how they sort of feed off of each other and how they're almost a reaction to each other. So, you've got Aries right at the beginning, number one, wants to be first, wants to be in front. And then you've got this sort of grounding essence of Taurus of let's, just bring this all back down. And then you've got the let's go back up with Gemini. Let's think about this. What can we think of? Let's get creative. And then you've got the more sort of insular Cancer of sort of, keeping it personal. And then of course the exuberance of Leo, completely outgoing and, literally shines. And so you can really see how they're almost like a reaction to each other. This character is a bit crazy and way out, and they get a bit too far off on a tangent, and they, lose sight of where they're going. Let's have a sign that sort of remembers where they're going, keeps sight on the goal the whole time. So you can really see how they bat against each other, which I really like. It's really interesting. And you can also see that in the sort of the other way that astrology works, which is the precession of ages or civilizations, which is what we're transitioning through at the moment from Pisces to Gemini. Gemini, to Aquarius. So you can sort of see that change again. It's really interesting to think of Pisces as an age of, you know, sort of storytelling, emotion, empathy, coming together emotionally, things like that. Moving into Aquarius, which is very different, which is much more individualistic and needing to be true to oneself, and but also being quite sort of unempathetic and impersonal. It's really interesting, and you can see how those civilizations again would feed off of each other. So after Aquarius and all the different ways that Aquarius is going to go, all the different avenues it's going to explore, it's probably going to go to some places where it shouldn't, and lose track of itself, and it's going to need Capricorn to come in and ground it and bring it back down. So it's really interesting to think of that going back. If you are interested in that sort of thing, which why wouldn't you be? So we're just coming out the age of Pisces now, which led on from the age of Aries, which was very much the fire. And if you look back at that time, sort of 2,500 years ago, of how the world was, how people were, it was very much individualistic, but it was also quite sort of cruel in a way. It was, you know, very determined to be the winner. And, you know, so you've got like sort of an eye for an eye and things like that. Yeah, and right back, people are sort of interested in looking at these civilizations right back. So times of Atlanta and things is probably the previous age of Leo, which makes sense because like Leo is you know, the king, the lion. It shines, it roars. Yeah. It's really, really interesting. So I'm very interested in astrology anyway, and this book, you know, has just deepened that interest and furthered it. I found this particular book very easy to read. It certainly covered, you know, the main sort of important aspects of signs as well, but it was just written in a really easy way to just pick up and get lost in and find yourself reading way more than you intended to, which is always good. A couple of things I would say were not perfect about the book. I think it did sort of emphasize the positive aspects of the signs. All signs have their positives and, you know, negative aspects, and it's worth recognizing that and being aware of it. I did feel like it kind of skimmed over some of the negatives or tried to turn them into a positive, and sometimes you just need to be aware of it rather than trying to discount it. There were a couple of bits I think she should have reiterated the sign dates at the beginning of each star sign, because although, I mean, I know the signs pretty well, as I'd get to a new sign, I'd be thinking, who do I know with this sign? And it would have just been handy to have had those dates actually there with the sign. And I would scrap the mantra. I didn't like the mantra because it seemed to be what that sign should try to aim for. But it didn't seem to be related to what that sign actually is. So, yeah, and the author objects, I find that they're very changeable between different authors and different books, so I tend to not focus on them too much. Okay, but I mean, I'm being picky. It was a really good book, and I really enjoyed it. And, yeah, I'm always interested in astrology. I've usually got some kind of window up somewhere on some little thing that I've heard about or thought about that I want to find out more about. So yeah, it's an ongoing interest, and yeah, obviously it's up to you whether you believe it or not, but it is really fascinating. I think it's very good to understand yourself as well, which somebody who's got a lot of Aries is going to be interested in themselves, but I do think it's very interesting to just understand why you behave in those ways, why you have those reactions, and why you have those character traits, and not to be bound by them or like, you know, there's nothing you can do about it. More to understand it so that you can actually work with it and do something about it, and perhaps if you know that you're going to respond in that way, try to look at other influences that are going on in your chart and emphasize which are your character, and emphasize those sides more. Anyway, so that was really good. Loved that book, and we're definitely looking for more books on astrology. yeah, I think I want to move out of just looking at the sun sign books as well. Yeah. So anyway, the book that I am reading now is this one, which is Paris Echo by Sebastian Faulks. And this is a fiction which I'm flying through, and I reckon I'll probably be doing a review for that soon because, yeah, I'm getting through that really quickly. But that's it for now. Okay, thank you.